I never thought I'd be fighting for my daughter's love from a hospital bed at 74. The day my stroke hit, I was arranging peonies from my garden at Indigo Vale, the same flowers that bloomed when Isla took her first steps across our veranda. 60 years in that house, 4 generations of Maren women, and a bloodline of stubborn pride that runs deeper than the mountain roots. Now, my right side barely responds, and the doctors speak in hushed tones outside my door. What would Isla say if she knew I never signed over the deed? That the family estate she believes belongs to her cousin still sits in my name. After 3 years of silence, would property be enough to bring my daughter back? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The antiseptic smell hits you first in these places. It's the scent of surrender, of bodies betraying their owners after decades of loyal service. My private room at Asheville Regional is nicer than most. Perks of a lifetime of careful investing, and an ex-husband who felt perpetually guilty for leaving. Wide windows face the Blue Ridge Mountains, the same view I've cherished from Indigo Vale for nearly 5 decades, just from a different angle. "Morning, Ms. Maren. How are we feeling today?" Nurse Layla asks, bustling in with her rolling cart of medications. I've come to appreciate her particular rhythm, brisk but never rushed, efficient but never cold. About as well as anyone with half a working body, I respond, attempting to smile with the left side of my face that still obeys my commands. "That sense of humor will serve you well in physical therapy," she replies, checking my vitals with practiced precision. "Dr. Walsh will be in shortly to discuss your progress. Any visitors expected today?" The question lands like a small stone dropped into still water. Ripples of shame and hurt expand outward from my center. "Just Margaret this afternoon," I say, referring to my sister-in-law who visits faithfully 3 times a week. "She's bringing some paperwork from home." Layla nods, knowing better than to ask about my daughter. 3 weeks in this room, and not a single visit from Isla. No calls, no flowers, not even a message passed through Margaret. Just the vast, echoing absence I've grown accustomed to over the last 3 years. I watch the mountains through my window as Layla finishes her routine. The morning fog still clings to the valleys, shrouding the landscape in mystery. Much like my relationship with Isla, so much hidden in the mist of unspoken words and festering hurts. It wasn't always this way. Once, we were inseparable. I raised her alone after her father left when she was 8, and we formed the kind of bond that only shared struggle can forge. For years it was Isla and Eloise against the world, until it wasn't. The rift began small, a missed Sunday dinner, unreturned, phone calls, shorter visits to Indigo Vale. Then came the argument about her husband, James. I never trusted him. Saw the calculation in his eyes when he looked around our family home. When I voiced my concerns, something broke between us. 3 Thanksgiving dinners, 3 Christmases, 3 birthdays passed without her. Until my stroke 3 weeks ago, Margaret called her, of course. "She's busy with work," came the excuse. Then, "The kids have school events." Finally, no excuse at all. Just silence. Shift in my bed. The movement awakening fresh pain in my uncooperative right side. Physical pain is straightforward. Almost a relief compared to the complicated ache of a daughter's absence. My nightstand holds the only family photo I brought to the hospital. Isla at her college graduation, her arm around my shoulders, both of us beaming with possibility. I was so proud that day, the first Maren woman to graduate college, breaking our family's cycle of marrying young and sacrificing dreams. Dr. Walsh arrives mid-morning, chart in hand, his bow tie as precisely knotted as his schedule. "Your numbers are improving, Eloise," he says, scanning my vitals. "The swelling in your brain continues to decrease. I'm optimistic about your recovery, though we're still looking at several weeks of inpatient rehabilitation." Weeks? The word feels heavy. "I need to get home, doctor. There are matters that need my attention." He looks at me over his glasses. "The only matter that needs your attention is getting better. Whatever's waiting at home will still be there." But that's just it. I'm not sure it will. Rumors have reached me through Margaret that James has been making inquiries about Indigo Vale, consulting with real estate developers. He assumes the property passed to Isla after my sister's death last year, as per our family's verbal agreement. What he doesn't know, what none of them know, is that I never filed the transfer paperwork. Indigo Vale remains mine. All 86 acres of pristine Blue Ridge property, the historic main house, and the guest cottage by the stream. In today's market, worth well over $2 million. In terms of family legacy, priceless. My decision to withhold this information wasn't born from malice. When my sister died and the property reverted to me, Isla and I were already estranged. Signing over the estate to a daughter who wouldn't even speak to me felt like surrendering the last thread connecting us. So I held on, hoping for reconciliation before legalities. Margaret arrives after lunch, her arms full of mail she's collected from my house, and a canvas tote bag containing the documents I requested. "You look better," she says, settling into the visitor's chair. Margaret has always been direct, a quality I've appreciated in our 40 years as in-laws, even after her brother and I divorced. "Liar," I reply with my half-smile. "But I appreciate the sentiment. Did you bring everything?" She nods, pulling out a worn leather portfolio from her bag. "All the property documents for Indigo Vale, your will, and the trust paperwork, though I still don't understand the urgency. You're going to recover, Eloise." I gesture for the portfolio with my good hand. "Humor a woman who's confronted her mortality, Margaret." She passes it over, concern etching lines around her eyes. "Have you heard from her?" No need to specify who her is. Would I be asking for these if I had? The words come out sharper than intended. Margaret sighs. "She should be here. I've told her as much. Don't push her. It will only make things worse. I've had 3 years to come to terms with Isla's absence. Margaret's protective indignation while touching won't help. She's being manipulated, Eloise. James has been in her ear for years, painting you as controlling, difficult. You know that." I flip through the documents, the familiar letterhead of my family's estate comforting in its formality. Everyone makes their own choices. Isla's a grown woman. A grown woman who believes her cousin now owns her family home. A grown woman whose husband is already planning how to develop the property when the imaginary inheritance comes through. I look up sharply. "What do you mean, develop?" Margaret's expression confirms my fears. "James met with Ridgemont Development last week. Someone from their office is an old client of mine. They're discussing parceling the land for luxury cabins." My heart monitors beep faster, causing Margaret to cast a worried glance at the machines. "Calm down, Eloise. Nothing can happen without your signature." "But they think they don't need it," I say, my voice barely above a whisper. "They think Catherine owned it when she died, and now it's Isla's." Margaret takes my hand, her touch grounding me. "Which is why you need to tell her the truth, before this goes any further." The truth. Such a simple concept, so devastating in practice. And how do I do that? Send a text? Sorry you haven't visited your mother after her stroke, but by the way, I still own Indigo Vale, so tell your husband to back off. Margaret doesn't laugh at my gallows humor. You call her, or I bring her here. She needs to know. I close the portfolio, suddenly exhausted. Not yet. I need to think. After Margaret leaves, I stare at the mountains until dusk settles across the landscape. In the fading light, I can almost make out the ridge where Indigo Vale sits, though it's miles away. 5 generations of Maren women have been born and died on that property. My great-grandmother planted the rhododendron gardens that bloom spectacularly each spring. My grandmother built the library wing that houses first editions of Southern literature. My mother restored the original hardwood floors throughout the main house, spending summers on her hands and knees with sandpaper and stain. And me? I preserved it all. Maintained the structures, kept the gardens, paid the taxes, even through the lean years after the divorce. Also, Isla would have her birthright, a home that could never be taken from her, roots that run deep into North Carolina soil. Now her husband wants to carve it into vacation rentals. As night falls, I make my decision, reaching for the hospital phone with my good hand. I dial a number I haven't called in years. Whitman and Associates Law Offices, answers a voice I recognize immediately. George, it's Eloise Maren. Eloise! His surprise is evident. I heard about your stroke. How are you? Alive, which is more than I expected last month. I reply. I need your help with some estate matters. Urgently. George Whitman has been my attorney for 30 years. He handled my divorce, my sister's estate, and all matters related to Indigo Vale. Of course. Do you need me to come to the hospital? Tomorrow, if you can. And George, complete discretion on this. No calls to family members, not even to confirm appointments. There's a pause on the line. Understood. I'll see you tomorrow afternoon. I replace the receiver and turn again to the darkened window. My reflection stares back, thinner, older, frailer than I remember myself. But my eyes hold the same determination that got me through raising a child alone, building a career, and preserving a legacy. Isla believes I've betrayed her by disapproving of her husband. She has no idea what betrayal truly looks like. But she'll learn, not through cruelty or revenge, but through the hardest lesson of all. The truth she's been avoiding for 3 years. I reach for the photo on my nightstand, tracing Isla's smiling face with my fingertip. Time to come home, daughter, I whisper to the glass. Whether you want to or not. The morning brings a flurry of medical activity. Blood draws, imaging tests, consultations with specialists. By the time lunch arrives, I'm exhausted and irritable. You're pushing yourself too hard, Layla observes, adjusting my pillows. Recovery isn't a race. At my age, everything's a race against time, I retort. She smiles, unperturbed by my mood. Your daughter called the nurse's station this morning. My heart jumps. Isla? She wanted an update on your condition. I told her she could get a much better update by visiting in person. Hope rises before I can temper it. What did she say? That she'd try to come by soon. Layla's expression is carefully neutral, but I can read the skepticism there. Soon, I repeat, the word hollow. 3 weeks after a stroke that nearly killed me, and the best my only child can offer is soon. George arrives promptly at 2, looking exactly as he has for the past 20 years. Silver-haired, impeccably dressed, carrying his worn leather briefcase. He kisses my cheek with genuine affection before settling into the visitor's chair. "You gave us all quite a scare," he says, pulling out his reading glasses. "Not finished scaring people yet," I reply. "I need to make some changes to my will and the Indigo Vale Trust. Immediately, George's eyebrows rise, but he simply nods and takes out a legal pad. "Tell me what you're thinking." For the next hour, I outline my plan. George asks clarifying questions, makes notes, occasionally shakes his head. "It's unorthodox," he says finally. "Is it legal?" "Yes, but—" Then we proceed. My tone leaves no room for argument. George sighs. "I'll have the paperwork drawn up by tomorrow. But Eloise, have you considered simply talking to Isla first? This feels extreme." I look out at the mountains, gathering my thoughts. 3 years, George. 3 years of silence, of missed holidays, of her children growing up without knowing me. And now her husband's planning to develop Indigo Vale without even confirming ownership. I turn back to him. "We're beyond simple conversations." He nods slowly. "I'll take care of everything, but as your friend, not just your lawyer. I hope you know what you're doing." After he leaves, I ask Layla for a sedative. The emotions of the day have drained me, and tomorrow will require all my strength. As the medication takes effect, I drift into dreams of Indigo Vale as it was when Isla was small, the sound of her laughter echoing through the gardens, her small hand in mine as we walked the grounds each morning. I wake to raised voices in the hallway. Night has fallen, and the hospital has settled into its quieter rhythms, making the disruption more jarring. I don't care about visiting hours. I'm her daughter. The voice sends electricity through my veins. Ms. Maren has been sleeping for hours. The doctor ordered rest. Layla's professional tone is unmistakable. "I've driven 3 hours to get here. I'm not leaving without seeing her." I press the call button, my hand trembling slightly. Layla appears at my door looking apologetic. "I'm sorry, Ms. Maren. Did we wake you?" "It's fine," I say, my voice stronger than I feel. "Please let her in." Layla hesitates, then nods. 5 minutes only. She needs rest. And then Isla is standing in my doorway, and time folds in on itself. My beautiful, stubborn daughter. Thinner than I remember. Her chestnut hair. So like mine, at her age. Now styled in a shoulder-length cut that frames her face elegantly. She's wearing a charcoal business suit, suggesting she came directly from work. "Mom," she says, the word landing like a stone between us. "Isla." I struggle to sit up straighter, hating my weakness in this moment. "This is a surprise." She steps further into the room but keeps her distance. "Aunt Margaret called. Again. She said it was urgent." Not concern for me, then. Just Margaret's persistence. I tamp down disappointment. "I didn't ask her to call you." Isla's jaw tightens, a gesture so familiar it hurts. "Of course not. Heaven forbid you actually ask for me." "Would you have come if I had?" The question hangs in the air between us. She looks away, her gaze fixing on the mountains visible through the window. "You look terrible." Strokes will do that. I attempt a smile, though the hospital gown does me no favors. A flicker of something. Guilt? Concern? Crosses her face. "The nurse said you're recovering well." "I'm alive. The rest is relative." Isla moves to the window, keeping her back to me. "James wanted to come, but someone needed to stay with the kids. The mention of my grandchildren, Emma, now 12, and Ryan, 9, sends a pang through my chest. 3 years of birthdays and school plays missed. 3 years of growth and change I'll never recover. How are they? I ask softly. Good. Emma's playing violin now. Ryan's obsessed with geology. Her voice softens when speaking of them. They take after you. Curious about everything. Isla turns, surprise evident in her expression. Perhaps she expected recrimination, not conversation. Mom, She stops, seeming to reconsider her words. Why did Margaret say it was urgent? Are you worse than they're letting on? I could lie, could use her concern, however reluctant, to draw her closer. But that's not why I set this plan in motion. I'm exactly as I appear, I say, recovering slowly. Margaret likely thought a mother-daughter reunion qualified as urgent after 3 years. Isla's posture stiffens. I can't do this right now. Not the guilt trip, not the history. No one's keeping you here. The words are harsh, but my tone isn't. It's simple truth. She's chosen absence for 3 years. One reluctant visit won't change that. She grabs her purse from where she'd set it on the foot of my bed. This was a mistake. I'll check with your doctors before I head back. Isla. My voice stops her at the door. George Whitman will be reaching out to you tomorrow. Legal matters regarding Indigo Vale. She freezes, then turns slowly. What legal matters? The property passed to me when Aunt Catherine died. I keep my expression neutral. You should speak with George. Mom, what did you do? A note of panic enters her voice. What I should have done years ago. I meet her gaze steadily. Protect our family legacy, Layla appears at the door. I'm sorry, but Ms. Maren needs her rest now. Isla looks between us, clearly frustrated. This conversation isn't over. No, I agree, it's just beginning. After she leaves, Layla checks my vitals, concerned by my elevated heart rate. Family can be more exhausting than physical therapy, she observes. Family is the hardest work we ever do, I reply, suddenly bone-weary. Sleep eludes me that night. I replay Isla's visit, analyzing every word, every gesture. She came, not out of concern for me, but it's a start. Tomorrow, when George calls her, the real test begins. Morning brings Dr. Walsh with news that my latest brain scan shows continued improvement. You're defying expectations, Eloise, he says with genuine pleasure. I'm recommending you begin intensive rehabilitation next week. How long until I can go home? He considers the question. With your progress and proper support in place. Live-in nurse, modified living spaces, possibly 3 to 4 weeks, not soon enough. But I keep this thought to myself. George calls mid-morning. The paperwork is ready, he says. I've scheduled a meeting with Isla for tomorrow afternoon. She agreed to meet? She was highly motivated to discuss the matter. His diplomatic phrasing tells me everything I need to know about Isla's reaction. Thank you, George. Keep me informed. The day passes slowly. Margaret visits, bringing fresh flowers and news from town. I don't mention Isla's visit, and she doesn't ask. We've developed a careful dance around painful subjects over the years. As evening approaches, my phone rings. An unfamiliar number. Eloise Maren, I answer. Mrs. Maren, this is James Caldwell. My son-in-law's voice sends a chill through me. In our few interactions over the years, he's always called me Eloise. His sudden formality speaks volumes. James. What a surprise. I'll be direct. What exactly are you doing with Indigo Vale? No inquiries about my health, no pleasantries, just demands. Exactly what I expected from him. I'm afraid I don't discuss legal matters over the phone. If you have questions about the property, George Whitman would be happy to address them. This isn't appropriate, and you know it. His voice drops to a near hiss. That property belongs to Isla. It's been promised to her since she was a child. Promises aren't deeds, James. I keep my voice level. As I said, George can explain everything. Isla is devastated. First you refuse to accept me, then you punish her by withholding her inheritance. I'm quite tired. I interrupt. Stroke recovery takes a toll. Please direct all further communications through my attorney. I disconnect before he can respond, my hand shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from the effort of restraining myself. What I want to tell him about his transparent interest in my family's property, about the developer meetings Margaret uncovered, about the hurt he's encouraged Isla to nurse all these years, would only make things worse. Instead, I watch the sunset paint the mountains in gold and violet, reminding myself that this confrontation has been 3 years in the making. The pain now is necessary for any hope of healing later. The next day passes in medical routines. Physical therapy for my weakened right side. Cognitive exercises to address the minor speech difficulties the stroke left behind. I throw myself into recovery with new determination. Whatever comes next, I need my strength. At precisely 4 o'clock, my phone rings. George, it's done, he says without preamble. How did she take it? He sighs heavily. About as expected. Shock, anger, accusations. James was worse. I nearly had to ask him to leave the meeting. My chest tightens. But she understands the terms. Crystal clear. And Eloise. He pauses. She's coming to see you. Tonight. I suggested waiting until she'd processed everything, but she was insistent. I thank him and end the call, preparing myself for the storm. It arrives sooner than expected. How could you? Isla bursts into my room less than an hour later, eyes blazing, cheeks flushed with anger. She throws a folder of papers onto my bed. A trust? With conditions? Are you out of your mind? I straighten myself as much as I'm able, grateful that I asked Layla to help me change into a proper nightgown and robe earlier. Small dignities matter in moments like these. Hello, Isla. Don't hello, Isla me. You've had the property this entire time? Let me believe it went to Aunt Catherine, then to me, when you never signed the transfer. And now this manipulation? I gesture to the visitor's chair. Please sit. Shouting isn't good for either of us. To my surprise, she complies, though tension radiates from her rigid posture. I never lied to you about Indigo Vale, I say calmly. You assumed the verbal agreement our family had was legally executed. You never asked, and we weren't speaking for me to correct your assumption. So this is my fault? Her voice rises again. You're holding my inheritance hostage because we had a disagreement? A disagreement? I can't keep the incredulity from my voice. Isla, you've shut me out for 3 years. Not a call, not a visit, not even a card at Christmas. I nearly died 3 weeks ago, and you couldn't be bothered to come until Margaret wore you down. That's not a disagreement. That's estrangement. Because you made it impossible. She stands abruptly, pacing the small room. You judged James from day one, made him feel unwelcome, implied he was after your money. Our money, I correct quietly. The Maren family legacy, which, it seems, was exactly what interested him. given the meetings with developers he's been taking. Isla freezes. What are you talking about? Ridgemont Development? Luxury cabins parceled across our land? Does any of this sound familiar? The genuine confusion on her face answers my question before she does. James mentioned exploring options for the unused acreage, but just conceptually, for our retirement. He's met with them twice in the past month. They've drawn up preliminary plans. I keep my voice gentle, watching realization dawn across her features. That's not... He would have discussed it with me first. But doubt has crept into her voice. Perhaps we've both been betrayed in different ways, I offer. Please, sit. Let me explain the trust. After a moment's hesitation, she sits again, her anger now tinged with uncertainty. Indigo Vale has never legally left my possession, I begin. When your Aunt Catherine died, the property reverted to me as the last living, original heir. I've now placed it in an irrevocable trust. I gesture to the papers she threw down. You are the sole beneficiary of that trust, with full inheritance upon my death. With conditions, she says tersely. Yes. I meet her gaze directly. For the next 6 months while I recover, you will visit me once a week. Real visits, Isla. Not 5 minutes of accusations and anger. We will talk, truly talk, about the last 3 years, about James, about the children, about what drove us apart. Or what? You'll disinherit me? Bitterness edges her words. No. The property will be donated to the North Carolina Historic Preservation Foundation. It will become a museum and public gardens. The Maren legacy will continue. Just not in our family. Isla stares at me, disbelief evident. You would do that? Throw away 5 generations of family history to force me to visit you. I would preserve 5 generations of family history, rather than watch it be carved into vacation rentals. I correct her. And I would try one last time to heal what's broken between us before it's too late. This is emotional blackmail. This is a mother's last resort. I feel suddenly tired, the weight of years of separation pressing down. Isla, what happened to us? We were so close once. The simple question seems to catch her off guard. For a moment, her defenses waver, and I glimpse the daughter I remember, sensitive, thoughtful, capable of profound empathy. You know what happened, she says finally, but the fire has gone out of her voice. You couldn't accept my choices, my husband, my life in Charlotte, my decision to work instead of staying home with the children. Is that really what you think? I ask softly. That I judged your choices? Ella, I fought for women's rights when it cost me friends and family. I raised you alone while building a career when society said mothers couldn't do both. The last thing I would ever judge is your independence. She looks away, but not before I see confusion in her eyes. You said James wasn't good enough, that he was calculating. I said I was concerned about his intentions. There's a difference. I shift, in the bed, pain shooting through my right side with the movement. And it seems my concerns weren't entirely unfounded. Isla notices my grimace. Are you all right? Should I call the nurse? The genuine concern in her voice gives me hope. I'm fine. Just tired. Stroke recovery isn't for the faint of heart. She studies me, really seeing me perhaps for the first time since entering the room. You really did almost die, didn't you? Yes, I say simply. And all I could think about was you. About all the things left unsaid between us. Silence fills the room, thick with 3 years of absence, and the weight of what's at stake. Finally, Isla picks up the trust paperwork, scanning it again. Once a week for 6 months. Yes. And if I refuse, then Indigo Vale becomes public property after my death, and you lose your birthright. I hold her gaze. But more importantly, we lose our last chance to be mother and daughter again. She stands, gathering her purse and the papers. I need to think and talk to James. Of course. I try to hide my disappointment. Part of me had hoped for immediate reconciliation, however naive that might be. At the door, she pauses. Your first granddaughter-in-law is getting married next month. The statement catches me off guard. I didn't know you had a niece. I don't. It's that old joke you used to tell, that the women in our family are so stubborn, we're grandmothers-in-law, before we admit we're wrong. A ghost of a smile touches her lips. You'd tell it every time you and Grandma Maren made up after an argument. The memory washes over me. My mother and I, so similar in temperament, clashing, then reconciling in the familiar pattern of Maren women. I'd forgotten the joke, but Isla hadn't. We come by our stubbornness honestly, I offer. She nods. I'll be back next week, Tuesday afternoon. After she leaves, I let tears fall freely for the first time since my stroke. Not from sadness or pain, but from a cautious, fragile hope. The battle is far from over. There will be more confrontations, more revelations, more pain before healing can truly begin. James will likely fight against the terms of the trust, against my influence over Isla, but for tonight, I have won something precious. A beginning. A chance to reclaim what 3 years of silence has eroded. A possibility that my daughter might once again be part of my life. That I might know my grandchildren before time runs out. I watch darkness settle over the mountains, imagining Indigo Vale in the distance, standing solid and unchanged as it has for generations. Like the house, the Maren women endure. Weathering storms, bearing scars, but remaining unbroken. 6 months, 24 visits. It seems both an eternity and an instant to rebuild what took years to destroy. But as I drift toward sleep, I find myself planning what flowers to plant in the garden this spring. Peonies, Isla's favorite since childhood. Planning for a future that, for the first time in 3 years, might include my daughter. The next morning brings an unexpected visitor, James. He enters my room without knocking, his tall frame filling the doorway with barely contained anger. In the 7 years he's been married to Isla, I've seen him perhaps a dozen times, and never alone. Mrs. Maren, he says, his voice carefully controlled. We need to talk. I press the button to raise my bed to a sitting position, grateful that Layla helped me dress in proper clothes this morning. A simple blouse and cardigan that make me feel less vulnerable than a hospital gown. James, please come in. I gesture to the chair Isla occupied yesterday. He remains standing. This trust arrangement is unacceptable. You're manipulating Isla emotionally at a vulnerable time, as opposed to allowing you to manipulate her financially. I keep my tone conversational. Please, sit. Looming over a stroke patient doesn't strengthen your position. His jaw clenches, but he takes the seat, perching on its edge like a man prepared to flee. James has always been handsome in a conventional way. Tall, athletic build, the kind of clean-cut features that photograph well on corporate websites. His wealth management firm has been successful, though I've always suspected his family connections opened more doors than his financial acumen. You've misunderstood my intentions with Indigo Vale, he says. The discussions with developers were preliminary, research only. Research conducted without Isla's knowledge, About property you both believed she already owned. I fold my hands in my lap. Forgive me if that seems suspicious. We've been planning our financial future. The property has significant untapped potential. The property has been in my family for 5 generations. It's not a stock portfolio. To be optimized. Anger flashes in his eyes. This is exactly why Isla cut you off. You're controlling, judgmental, stuck in the past. Am I the reason she cut me off, James? Or did you encourage that distance because I saw through your interest in our family's wealth? The question is direct, brutal in its simplicity. He stands abruptly. I won't be accused in this way. The trust is emotional blackmail, and we'll challenge it legally if necessary. You're welcome to try. I remain calm. George assured me it's ironclad, and consider what a legal challenge would reveal. Your meetings with developers about property you didn't own, conducted without your wife's knowledge. You have no proof of that, don't I? The bluff is calculated. Margaret's information is second-hand at best, but James doesn't know that. Uncertainty flickers across his face before his mask of indignation returns. Isla agreed to visit out of concern for your health. Nothing more. She feels sorry for you. The barb strikes its intended target, but I don't give him the satisfaction of seeing it land. Then we both get what we want. She fulfills the trust. Requirements, you get your inheritance eventually, and I get to see my daughter. Everyone wins. Except you've damaged her trust in me in the process. Have I? Or have your own actions done that? I lean forward slightly. Tell me, James, what exactly were you planning to do with Indigo Vale that required such secrecy from your wife? He gathers his coat, clearly done with the conversation. Isla will fulfill your conditions because she's a dutiful daughter, despite everything. But don't mistake compliance for reconciliation. After he leaves, I sit quietly, processing the encounter. James is worried, more worried than he should be, if his intentions were as innocent as claimed. The knowledge doesn't bring satisfaction, only sadness for Isla. Whatever happens between us, she has difficult truths to confront in her marriage. The weekend passes slowly. Margaret visits on Saturday, bringing homemade soup and fresh concern. James came to see me, she tells me, settling into the visitor's chair. Wanted to know what I told you about his meetings with developers. What did you say? That I'd tell him when he explained why he was having those meetings without Isla's knowledge. She smiles grimly. He didn't appreciate that. I pick at the soup, suddenly not hungry. I may have made things worse for her. Coming between a wife and husband is dangerous territory, even with the best intentions. Margaret sets her own soup aside. You didn't come between them, Eloise. James did that himself with his scheming. She hesitates. Have you considered what happens if the trust works? If you and Isla reconcile? Will you still hold Indigo Vale over her head? The question stings with its implication. This isn't about property, Margaret. It never was, isn't it? At least partly. Her gaze is kind but unflinching. You're using the only leverage you have. I understand that. But once used, that leverage is gone forever. Trust destroyed is nearly impossible to rebuild. I stare, out at the mountains, considering her words. If Isla and I truly reconcile, Indigo Vale will be hers. No strings attached. But I need to know it will remain in the family, not carved into rental properties. Then perhaps that should be in the trust as well. A commitment to preservation, not just visitation. The suggestion resonates. I'll speak with George on Monday. Sunday brings unexpected joy. A video call from my physical therapist's tablet. Isla's face appears on screen, and beside her, 2 children I barely recognize. Grandma? Emma's voice is tentative, her face more mature than the 9-year-old in my last photos. Mom said you're in the hospital. Tears spring to my eyes before I can compose myself. Emma, you've grown so much. I'm 12 now, she says with the seriousness only pre-teens can muster. I play violin. So I heard. I'd love to hear you play sometime. Ryan pushes his face closer to the camera. I collect rocks. Do you like rocks, Grandma? The simple question from a child who barely remembers me breaks something open inside. I love rocks. Indigo Vale has a creek with the most beautiful river. Stones you've ever seen. Can we see them? Mom said we might visit you there when you're better. I glance at Isla, whose expression is carefully neutral. I'd like that very much, Ryan. The call lasts only 10 minutes, the children growing restless as children do. But it feels monumental. Afterward, I sleep better than I have since the stroke, dreaming of grandchildren exploring the grounds of Indigo Vale, discovering its treasures, as Isla once did. Monday brings George with revised trust documents. I've added the preservation clause you requested, he says, presenting the papers. Any future sale or development of the property is prohibited for 50 years after transfer. And Isla, have you shown her the changes? Meeting with her this afternoon. He studies me over his reading glasses. You're playing a dangerous game, Eloise. Not a game, George. A last chance. After he leaves, Dr. Walsh arrives with good news. I'm being transferred to the rehabilitation wing tomorrow. You'll have intensive physical therapy daily, he explains. With your progress, we're optimistic about significant recovery. How soon until I can go home? Let's take it one step at a time. But if all goes well, perhaps 3 weeks. 3 weeks. 6 hospital visits from Isla before I can return to Indigo Vale. The timeline feels both endless and insufficient. Tuesday arrives with nervous anticipation. I spend extra time with Layla's help washing my hair, applying light makeup, choosing my most flattering nightgown and robe. Small vanities, perhaps, but facing my daughter as myself rather than just a patient matters. Isla arrives precisely at 2, carrying a small gift bag and looking as nervous as I feel. I brought these, she says, placing the bag on my bed. Inside are luxurious hand creams and a soft cashmere throw in deep blue. Hospital air is so drying, and the blankets here are awful. The thoughtfulness of the gifts, practical yet personal, touches me deeply. Thank you. That's very kind. An awkward silence falls. We're both acutely aware that this visit isn't spontaneous, but contractually obligated. Hardly the basis for natural conversation. George showed me the revised trust, she says finally, taking the visitor's chair. The preservation clause. I thought it important to clarify my intentions. This isn't about controlling you, Isla. It's about preserving what 5 generations of Maren women have built. She nods slowly. I never intended to develop the property. That was James. The admission clearly costs her. When did you find out? Saturday night. We had quite the argument after I confronted him about the meetings. She twists, her wedding ring. A nervous habit she's had since childhood. He said it was an investment opportunity he was exploring. Nothing definite. And you believe him? Her eyes flash. He's my husband, Mom. Whatever issues we're working through, I do trust him. I recognize the defensive posture, her shoulders tense, chin slightly raised. Pushing further will only entrench her position. I understand. Family loyalty is important. Is it? Because from where I sit, you've shown precious little of it these past 3 years. The words burst out, clearly long held. How so? I keep my voice neutral, inviting her perspective rather than defending myself. You shut James out from day one. Made him feel like an intruder, like he wasn't good enough for me. Every holiday, at Indigo Vale, every family dinner, you'd speak around him, never to him, ask about his business only to find fault with his methods. The accusations aren't entirely unfair, though they're colored by her perspective. I had concerns about his intentions, yes, but I never tried to come between you. You called him a social climber to Aunt Catherine. I heard you. The memory returns. A private conversation with my sister 7 years ago, not meant for Isla's ears. I was wrong to say that, and even more wrong not to address it directly with you, when I had concerns. My admission seems to surprise her. You never apologized before. Would you have listened if I had? The question isn't accusatory, just sad. She looks away. Probably not. I was so angry, so convinced you couldn't be happy for me. I wanted to be. I still do. I shift in the bed, pain flaring in my right side. I want you to have a partner who cherishes you for yourself, not what you stand to inherit. Isla's expression hardens again. And there it is. You still can't help yourself. Still judging. Observing isn't judging, Isla. A mother sees things. A woman in love might miss. I pause, choosing my next words carefully. But I should have trusted your judgment more, respected your choice, even with my reservations. The simple acknowledgement seems to deflate some of her anger. I'm not blind to James's flaws, Mom. Our marriage has challenges. But that was for me to figure out, not for you to point out. You're right. The admission comes easily, perhaps because 3 years of separation has given me perspective I lacked before. I overstepped. Silence falls again, but less strained this time. Isla looks around the hospital room, her gaze landing on the family photo on my nightstand. Your graduation day, I say, following her gaze. One of the proudest moments of my life. A small smile touches her lips. You cried when they called my name. So did you. I was thinking about Dad, wishing he could have been there. The mention of her father, my ex-husband who drifted further from Isla's life after our divorce, comes unexpectedly. He would have been proud. The words are true, despite the complicated history. You always said that. Never spoke ill of him, even after he left. She meets my eyes directly. I appreciated that, you know, even as a child. The conversation has entered vulnerable territory. Perhaps too much, too soon. Isla seems to realize this as well, glancing at her watch. I should go. The kids have activities after school. She stands, gathering her purse. Emma asked if she could send you a recording of her violin playing. I'd love that. My voice catches slightly. And perhaps they could visit next time, if you're comfortable with that. Isla hesitates. Let's see how you're feeling next week. You're moving to rehab tomorrow, right? Yes. Dr. Walsh is optimistic about my recovery. She nods. Good. That's good. At the door, she pauses. Same time next Tuesday? I'll be here. The simple exchange, making plans for another meeting, feels momentous. After she leaves, I wrap myself in the cashmere throw she brought, its soft weight comforting. The visit was stilted, uncomfortable in many ways, but also held moments of genuine connection, small breakthroughs in the wall between us. One visit down, 23 to... The rehabilitation wing of the hospital is busier, more active than the recovery floor. My days fill with physical therapy sessions, occupational therapy to relearn daily tasks with my weakened right side, speech exercises to address the slight slurring that still affects me when tired. Margaret visits midweek, bringing news from Indigo Vale. The gardener's keeping up with everything, she assures me, though he says the vegetable garden is suffering without your attention. Tell him to focus on the peonies, I reply. I want them perfect when I return. She raises an eyebrow. Planning. A homecoming. Planning for visitors, I correct. Isla mentioned bringing the children once I'm home. Margaret's expression softens. That's progress. How was the first official visit? Awkward, painful at times, but honest. I flex my right hand, pleased with the stronger movement after days of therapy. We have 23 more opportunities to rebuild what we've lost, one conversation at a time. And James? Has she mentioned him again? I shake my head. That's dangerous territory. I'm focusing on Isla and the grandchildren for now. The week passes in a blur of rehabilitation exercises and medical evaluations. By Friday, I can walk short distances with a walker, a victory that brings me one step closer to returning home. Sunday afternoon brings an unexpected email from Isla, a video attachment of Emma playing violin. The simple melody of Amazing Grace fills my hospital room, played with the careful concentration of a dedicated student. At the end, Emma looks into the camera and says, "Hope you feel better, Grandma. Mom says we might see you soon." I play the video 3 times. Tears streaming freely. This small bridge to my grandchildren feels more precious than any legal victory over Indigo Vale. Tuesday arrives with anxious anticipation. Isla comes promptly at 2, this time carrying a tablet. Emma insisted, she explains, setting up the device for a video call. Just for a few minutes before my visit. Soon my grandchildren's faces fill the screen. Emma serious and poised, Ryan bouncy and distracted. "Grandma, did you see me play violin?" Emma asks immediately. "I did, sweetheart. You play beautifully." I'm learning a harder song now. When can we visit you? The directness of children, their ability to cut through adult complications to simple truths, is refreshing. As soon as your mother thinks it's a good idea, I answer, glancing at Isla. Ryan pushes his face closer to the camera. "I brought my best rocks to show you, but Mom says we have to wait." The call lasts only 10 minutes before the children are called away by their father. James's voice audible in the background, but he never appears on screen. After they disconnect, Isla settles into the visitor's chair with visible tension. "Thank you for that," I say. "Seeing them means the world to me." She nods. "They've been asking about you, especially since I mentioned visiting. They barely know me. They know stories. I've told them about growing up at Indigo Vale." This admission surprises me. Despite our estrangement, she's kept me alive, in her children's memories. "What kinds of stories?" A small smile touches her lips. "The blackberry picking expeditions. How you'd let me eat more than I put in the basket. The time we found baby foxes under the garden shed and watched them all summer. The secret reading nook you built me in the library." Each memory she recounts opens something further in my chest. Proof that our shared history hasn't been erased, merely set aside. "They want to experience those things," she continues. "Emma's already talking about which bedroom, will be hers when we visit. When? I repeat softly. Not if. Isla meets my gaze directly. I've been thinking about this arrangement all week, about what it means to have these obligatory visits. She chooses her words carefully. I won't pretend this isn't complicated, that I'm not still angry about many things. But the children deserve to know their grandmother, and... She hesitates. Perhaps we do deserve a chance to fix what broke between us. It's more than I dared hope for from our second meeting. I'd like that. James isn't happy about it, she admits. He thinks you're manipulating me through the children. And what do you think? She considers the question seriously. I think you're using the only leverage you have to get what you really want, your family back. The property is just the means. Her insight, so accurate, momentarily takes my breath away. You always were perceptive. I learned from you. She shifts in her chair. There's something else. James and we're in counseling. Started last week. This news is unexpected. I'm glad, I say simply. Knowing any stronger reaction might shut down her confidence. We have issues to work through. His secrecy about Indigo Vale was the breaking point. But there's more. She twists her wedding ring. I don't know what happens next. With us, I mean. Whatever happens, you have a home at Indigo Vale. Always. The offer comes naturally, without calculation. Isla's eyes fill with tears. She quickly blinks away. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. 1 week at a time. The rest of the visit passes more comfortably, discussing her work as an architectural designer, her children's activities, my progress in rehabilitation. When she leaves, promising to return next Tuesday, I feel a cautious hope blooming, fragile, but genuine. The pattern establishes itself over the next 2 weeks. Tuesday visits from Isla, each slightly longer, slightly more relaxed than the last. Video calls with the grandchildren becoming a regular feature. Small confidences exchanged, old memories revisited, new understandings tentatively formed. By my 5th week in the hospital, 3rd in rehabilitation, Dr. Walsh delivers the news I've been waiting for. You're ready for outpatient care, Eloise. With proper home modifications and a visiting nurse, you can continue your recovery at Indigo Vale. The prospect of returning home fills me with both joy and trepidation. Home means independence, familiar comforts, my own space. But it also means the visits with Isla will change context, become more real, less controlled than our hospital encounters. I call Margaret immediately with the news, asking her to arrange for the necessary modifications. Handrails in the bathrooms, a temporary bedroom on the 1st floor, ramps where needed. Consider it done, she assures me. When's the release date? Friday. Will you drive me? Of course. She pauses. Have you told Isla? Not yet. I'm waiting until her visit tomorrow. Tuesday's visit brings a surprise. Isla arrives with a large portfolio under her arm. I've been thinking about the house, she says after our usual greetings. About the modifications you'll need. She opens the portfolio, revealing architectural drawings of Indigo Vale. I took the liberty of designing some changes. Nothing that alters the historic character. Just accessibility improvements. The drawings are detailed, thoughtful. A gently sloped entrance ramp disguised as a garden feature. Widened doorways that maintain the original moldings. A discreet elevator cleverly hidden within an existing closet space. You did this for me? The work represents hours of professional effort, a gift of her particular talents. I know how much you love that house, how important it is that it remains true to its history while still being functional. She flips through the pages. These changes would allow you to access all 3 floors again once you're fully recovered. The thoughtfulness behind the designs moves me deeply. They're perfect, Isla, truly. I can oversee the work if you'd like. Not all of it can be completed immediately, but the essential modifications could be done within a week or 2. I'd like that very much. I hesitate, then add, I'm being released on Friday. She looks up sharply. This Friday? That's fast. Dr. Walsh is pleased with my progress. I'll have a visiting nurse daily and continue outpatient therapy, but I can recover at home now. The house isn't ready. The basic modifications Margaret mentioned are in progress, but nothing like what you'll need long-term. She gestures to her drawings. This work hasn't even started. The temporary arrangements will suffice until your improvements can be implemented. Isla shakes her head. It's not safe. You need proper support, especially in the first few weeks. Home. Margaret will stay with me. Margaret works full-time, Mom, and a visiting nurse for a few hours isn't enough. She takes a deep breath, as if coming to a decision. The children have spring break next week. We were planning to visit my college roommate in Asheville, but we could stay at Indigo Vale instead. Help you settle in. The offer stuns me into momentary silence. You and the children, I clarify. At Indigo Vale? And James, she adds, watching my reaction carefully. For the week at least, we can help with the transition, and the children can finally see the estate. It makes sense. James. The prospect of my son-in-law in my home, the very man who plotted to develop the property, creates immediate anxiety. But refusing would mean refusing Isla and the grandchildren as well. Of course, I say, working to keep my voice neutral. You're all welcome. Isla studies me, clearly reading my reservation. He's trying, Mom. The counseling is helping, and he knows how important the property is to me. To us now. I nod, unwilling to voice my skepticism. Then I look forward to seeing all of you on Friday. After Isla leaves, I call George immediately. I need you to come to the hospital. Today, if possible. He arrives within the hour, concerned by the urgency in my voice. What's happened? I explain Isla's offer and my concerns about James's presence at Indigo Vale. I need to protect the property, George. Now more than ever. The trust already does that, Eloise. The preservation clause prevents development even after Isla inherits. I need something more immediate, something that protects it while I'm alive but potentially vulnerable. The stroke has made me acutely aware of my mortality, of how quickly control can be lost. George considers this. A conservation easement could work. It's a legal agreement that permanently limits uses of the land to protect its conservation values. We could designate most of the acreage, leaving the main house and immediate grounds unrestricted. How quickly can it be done? With expedited processing? Perhaps a week. But Eloise, this is a permanent decision. Once executed, the restrictions remain even if you change your mind later. I won't change my mind, I say firmly. Indigo Vale has survived 5 generations. I won't be the one who fails to protect it. He nods, making notes. I'll start the paperwork immediately. In the meantime, be careful what you sign. If James brings any documents regarding the property. I may be recovering from a stroke, George, but I'm not a fool. The words come out sharper than intended. I'm sorry, I'm just concerned. Understandably so. He pats my hand. Trust your instincts, Eloise. They've served you well all these years. Friday arrives with mixed emotions. Elation at finally leaving the hospital. Anxiety about the coming week with James and Isla. Margaret arrives mid-morning to drive me home, her practical efficiency a balm to my nerves. The essential modifications are complete, she assures me, as we wait for discharge paperwork. Handrails, a hospital bed in the downstairs study, ramps at the entrance and back porch. And Isla? Have you heard from her? They're arriving tomorrow. Morning. I've prepared the East Wing bedrooms, the ones with the connecting doors for the children. The East Wing, as far from the master suite as possible. Margaret's choice doesn't seem coincidental. The drive to Indigo Vale takes 40 minutes, winding through the increasingly rural landscape as we climb into the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. With each mile, tension eases from my shoulders. Going home. As we round the final curve in the long driveway, the house comes into view. A grand southern colonial with expansive porches and tall windows, surrounded by gardens just beginning, their spring bloom. Tears spring to my eyes at the sight. Welcome home, Eloise, Margaret says softly, understanding exactly what this moment means. The next 24 hours pass in settling in, adjusting to the modified spaces, consulting with the visiting nurse, reacquainting myself with the rhythms of the house. I sleep poorly, both from physical discomfort and anticipation of tomorrow's arrival. They come mid-morning, the crunch of tires on gravel alerting me before Margaret announces them. I'm seated on the main porch, wrapped in a light blanket against the spring breeze when their SUV pulls up. The children emerge first. Emma dignified and tentative, Ryan bursting with energy, both taking in the grand house with wide eyes. Isla follows, directing the unloading of luggage with practiced efficiency. James exits last, his expression neutral as he surveys the property. Grandma! Ryan spots me first, running up the porch steps before his mother can caution him to be careful. He stops just short of my chair, suddenly uncertain. Hello, Ryan, I say warmly. I'm so glad you've come to visit Indigo Vale. Is it really all yours? He asks with a child's directness. It belongs to our family, I correct gently. To the Maren women going back 5 generations. Someday it will be your mother's, and then perhaps your sister's. Emma has approached more cautiously, studying me with serious eyes. Does your arm still not work right? She asks, noting how my right hand rests awkwardly in my lap. It's getting stronger every day, I tell her. Would you like to see the library? I hear you love to read like your mother did at your age. She nods eagerly and I feel the first connection forming. A bridge across the years of absence through shared love of books. Isla joins us on the porch, leaving James to manage the luggage. Mom, you should be resting, she says, noting my pallor. The drive home yesterday must have been exhausting. I'm fine. Nothing heals the spirit like being home. I smile at my grandchildren. And having family here makes it even better. James finally approaches, extending his hand formally. Eloise, you're looking well. Thank you, James. Welcome to Indigo Vale. The exchange is stiffly polite, neither of us pretending at warmth we don't feel. Margaret appears from inside, saving us from further awkwardness. I've prepared lunch on the back terrace. Eloise, shall I help you? The day unfolds in small discoveries and tentative connections. I watch Emma explore the library with reverence, running her fingers along leather-bound spines much as Isla once did. Ryan discovers the collection of geodes in the study, each labeled in my father's precise handwriting. Isla moves through the House with the ease of homecoming, pointing out details to her children, sharing memories of her childhood. James remains peripheral, polite but watchful. I catch him studying the property from various windows, his expression calculating even, as his words remain courteous. The attorney in me recognizes assessment when I see it. By evening, exhaustion overwhelms me. The visiting nurse helps me prepare for bed in the makeshift bedroom downstairs, administering medications and checking my vital signs. "Your blood pressure's elevated," she notes with concern. Remember what Dr. Walsh said about stress management. I assure her I'll rest well, though we both know the presence of my estranged family, particularly James, creates exactly the stress I'm supposed to avoid. Sleep comes fitfully, interrupted by unfamiliar sounds. Footsteps upstairs, murmured, conversations, the occasional laughter of children. Sounds that should bring comfort, but instead heighten my awareness of all that's been lost and might never fully be regained. Sunday morning brings unexpected divisiveness over breakfast on the terrace. James casually mentions taking everyone for a drive to explore the surrounding property. "I thought we might walk the grounds today," I counter smoothly. "There's so much I want to show the children. The rhododendron, gardens, the creek with Ryan's riverstones, the old treehouse. The property is over 80 acres. James points out. "Surely you're not planning to walk it in your condition." "The main gardens and family areas are just a few acres," Isla interjects, clearly sensing tension. "We could walk those this morning, and perhaps drive the outlying areas another day." James's jaw tightens, but he nods agreement. I catch Margaret's knowing glance from across the table. The morning unfolds pleasantly despite the awkward beginning. The children delight in exploring the formal gardens. Emma sketching flowers in a notebook she carries. Ryan collecting interesting stones and leaves. Isla walks beside my wheelchair, pointing out plants she remembers from childhood. "The peonies will bloom soon," she observes as we pass the budding plants. "They were always my favorite." "I remember," I say softly. "You used to gather them for your room until there were hardly any left for the rest of the house," she laughs. "And you never scolded me for it." Some joys are worth sacrificing for. The words carry more weight than intended, but Isla simply nods, understanding in her eyes. James joins us as we reach the edge of the formal gardens, where the land begins to slope down toward the creek. "This would be the prime area," he says, seemingly to himself. "Prime area for what?" I ask directly. He gestures to the view. "Just admiring the sight lines. As an investment advisor, I've learned to recognize valuable assets." "James." Isla's voice holds warning. "We agreed not to discuss this." "Discuss what?" Emma asks, rejoining us with her sketchbook full of garden drawings. "Adult business, sweetheart," James says dismissively. "Nothing important." But I see the look that passes between husband and wife. Tension unresolved, conversations happening behind closed doors. Whatever counseling they're attending hasn't fully addressed the Indigo Vale situation. That evening, after the children are in bed, Isla finds me in the library, where I've been reviewing the conservation easement paperwork. "George delivered earlier. Working late?" she asks, settling into the chair opposite mine. "Just some legal matters for the property." I close the folder, not ready to share these particular plans. "How are you finding it? Being back?" She glances around the book-lined room. Its leather chairs and oriental rugs unchanged since her childhood. Like stepping back in time. In good ways, and difficult ones. The difficult part being me? I keep my tone light, but the question is serious. "No," she says after a moment's reflection. The difficult part is reconciling the home I remember with the reality now, seeing you struggling with recovery, realizing how much time we've lost. Her candor encourages mine. I've been thinking about what you said in the hospital, about my judging James from the beginning. There's some truth to that. She raises an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the admission. I did have reservations, I continue. But I handled them poorly. I should have given him more of a chance, for your sake, if nothing else. He's not perfect, she says quietly. Our marriage has challenges. The counseling is helping, but there are fundamental differences in how we view certain things. Such as Indigo Vale? She nods. He sees it as an underperforming asset. I see it as my heritage, my children's birthright. And these differences, can they be reconciled? Isla looks toward the window, where darkness has fallen over the gardens. I don't know. That's the honest answer. A week ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Now. She trails off, leaving the thought unfinished. I want to press further, to understand exactly what shifted, but years of legal training have taught me when silence elicits more truth than questions. After a moment, she continues. James had plans drawn up for developing the property, not just discussions, actual architectural renderings. I found them in his office last week. The revelation doesn't surprise me, but her hurt is palpable. Without discussing it with you? Apparently, he was waiting for the right time to present the idea, after my inheritance was secured. Her voice carries a bitterness I've never heard before. 42 luxury cabins, a central lodge, most of the original gardens bulldozed for amenities. The vision makes me physically ill, but I focus on Isla's pain rather than my own outrage. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Truly. The thing is, she continues, I'm not even sure I would have objected so strongly before seeing it again. Being here with the children, watching them discover what I always took for granted. She meets my gaze directly. You were right to protect it, Mom. Whatever your methods, the acknowledgement feels bittersweet. My methods were desperate, I admit. I was afraid of losing my last connection to you. Using Indigo Vale to force reconciliation was manipulative, she says, but without heat. And necessary, apparently. I was too stubborn to make the first move. The famous Maren pride. I smile ruefully. We come by it honestly. She returns the smile, and for a moment, I glimpse the daughter I remember. Thoughtful, perceptive, kind, beneath her strength. I should check on the children, she says, rising. Good night, Mom. Good night, Isla. I watch her leave, feeling both encouraged and uneasy. The rift between Isla and James seems to be widening. A development that might protect Indigo Vale, but at what cost to my daughter's marriage? The night brings fitful sleep again, disturbed by disjointed dreams of bulldozers tearing through gardens, and James standing among the ruins with architectural plans in hand. Monday dawns clear and bright, perfect spring weather for the children's first full day, exploring the property. At breakfast, Ryan announces his intention to find the best rocks ever in the creek, while Emma asks to see the family portraits Margaret mentioned. I'll take them, Isla offers. Mom, you should rest this morning. The nurse said you seemed tired. I'd like to come for the portrait gallery, I say, unwilling to miss this connection with my grandchildren. I can rest afterward. James remains absorbed in his tablet throughout breakfast, barely participating in the conversation. When he does look up, it's to check his watch with barely concealed impatience. Conference call at 10, he explains when Isla questions him. Work doesn't stop for spring break, unfortunately. I catch the flicker of irritation that crosses her face before she masks it. Whatever counseling revelations they've had, the fundamental divide in their priorities remains evident. The portrait gallery occupies the long central hallway of the second floor, a chronological display of Maren women dating back to my great-great-grandmother, who first purchased the property in 1868. With help from Margaret and the visiting nurse, I manage the stairs slowly, determined to share this family history personally. This is your great-great-grandmother, I tell Emma, pausing before a formal portrait of a stern-faced woman in Victorian dress. Josephine Maren. She bought Indigo Vale after the Civil War, when land was cheap and many couldn't afford to maintain. Large properties. Emma studies the portrait with serious eyes. She looks angry. I laugh. She had a reputation for being formidable, but also fair and generous to those she trusted. Like you, Isla says quietly, surprising me. We move through the gallery. My grandmother in her flapper dress, my mother in her double-duff nurse's uniform, me in my law school graduation robes, and finally, Isla at 18, painted the summer before. She left for college. Where are my pictures? Emma asks, searching the wall for further portraits. You'll be next, I tell her, when you turn 18. It's the family tradition. And Ryan? The portraits follow the female line, I explain. But we have photographs of all family members in the library albums. Ryan looks relieved rather than disappointed. Sitting for a formal portrait would clearly be torture for the energetic 9-year-old. Can we go to the creek now? He asks, attention already wandering. As they prepare for their creekside expedition, I return downstairs to rest, the effort of climbing stairs having taxed my still-recovering strength. From the sunroom, I watch Isla lead the children down the sloping lawn, toward the water, their excited voices carrying back to the house. James remains conspicuously absent, his conference call extending well into the afternoon. When he finally emerges, he joins me in the sunroom with a forced casualness that immediately puts me on alert. Beautiful property, he comments, gazing out at the view. Though the maintenance must be burdensome at your age. The Maren Trust covers all maintenance. Expenses, I reply, deliberate in mentioning the trust. It's quite well funded. Yes, the trust. He seats himself across from me. Isla explained the visitation requirements. Quite the creative legal maneuver. I had excellent counsel. By the time James left the sunroom, I knew. Not because of anything he said. He was careful with words. But in his expression, in the overly relaxed posture that never quite matched the glint of calculation in his eyes, I saw what I'd missed for years. James was no longer interested in Isla's inheritance. He was interested in mine. He knew something. That was the twist in the air, like thunder waiting in blue sky. His questions earlier, cloaked as idle observations, had a purpose, not just about the estate's upkeep, but about the trust, the financials, the easement I'd filed just days before. He was fishing, and worse, I had the sudden, sick feeling he wasn't alone. After he left, I buzzed Layla, now rotated to home care as my daytime nurse. Get me George Whitman, emergency line, and ask Margaret to come as soon as she can. Layla, sharp as ever, didn't question me. Yes, Ms. Maren. When George answered, his voice brisk, I wasted no time. George, is the easement finalized? Yes. Filed yesterday afternoon. Your heirs were notified. I blinked. Notified? He paused. I sent Isla a copy per our standard procedures. She's the trust's beneficiary. Why? I didn't tell her yet. Silence. Eloise. That was in the disclosure packet. If she read the trust, she saw the preservation clause. This just formalizes what was already in writing. Of course. Damn. James knew because Isla knew. And Isla hadn't said a word. George, has anyone besides Isla contacted your office? Another pause. Then, carefully. This morning, I received an inquiry from a real estate law firm in Charlotte. They asked for public access to the easement records. I inhaled sharply. Names? They didn't leave one. Just an email. Caldwell and Hyde. Ventures. So that was it. James wasn't just working with developers. He was one, or planned to be. Pull every document related to Indigo Vale, lock them down, and George, schedule a meeting with me, here, tomorrow. Understood. I ended the call, heart thudding. This was the twist I hadn't seen coming. For 3 years I believed the danger to Indigo Vale was James, through Isla, a parasite of inheritance. But I was wrong. James was more than a parasite. He was a strategist, and I was running out of time. When Margaret arrived an hour later, I filled her in over strong black tea and stronger language. That son of a... She cut herself off then, barked a dry laugh. I always knew he was slick, but this? I nodded. He's preparing something. The moment I'm gone, he'll fight for the estate, despite the trust, despite the easement. Can he? Not legally, not easily. I rub my temple. But there are loopholes, guardianship, incapacitation, claims of undue influence. You think he'd try to have you declared incompetent? Or claim the trust was created under duress after my stroke? Margaret's face turned red. You've got to tell Isla. I will, I said. But not yet. If she's truly beginning to see James clearly, I need her to come to the truth herself. Margaret sighed. So what now? More legal fortifications? Not just legal. I need proof. Proof of what? Of James's intentions. Documents, correspondence, proposals. Anything that shows he's planning to challenge the trust or circumvent the easement. Margaret looked at me sharply. You want me to... spy? No, I said. I want you to invite Isla and James to dinner. She blinked. You're joking? Not at all. We'll set a proper table. Candles. Wine. I'll sit at the head, like I always have. And while James is relaxed, thinking he's charmed us again, I'll ask him to explain his financial strategy for Indigo Vale. Margaret grinned slowly. Now that's the Maren I know. But inwardly, I wasn't grinning, because this wasn't about cleverness anymore. This was about survival, legacy, bloodlines, betrayals that ran deeper than silence. And there was one more thing. A secret I hadn't told anyone, not even Margaret. Something I'd learned 5 years ago, locked in a manila envelope at the bottom of my file cabinet. Flashback. 5 years earlier, it started with a letter from Catherine. I'd just returned from my final speaking engagement in Charleston. A dusty room of retirees and garden club. Widows who wanted me to explain how I'd preserved Indigo Vale's heirloom roses through cross-generational propagation. I came home tired, drained, wondering if anyone cared anymore. And then, among the mail, a hand-addressed envelope, my sister's handwriting. Inside, 2 things, a short letter and a DNA report. Eloise, you need to know the truth. I wasn't going to say anything, but the guilt's too heavy. Isla isn't your only heir. 5 years ago, I got a visit from someone named Ruth Ann Delaney. She claimed her mother was William's daughter, from an affair before he met you. I didn't believe her, but the dates lined up. So I asked her for proof. This is it. Ruth. Anne is Isla's half-sister. Do what you will with this, but I couldn't keep it from you any longer. Catherine, I remember staring at the report, seeing the names, the percentages, the signature of the lab director. Positive. 99.98% match William. Maren had another daughter. And she was alive. 43, living in Tennessee. I never told Isla, because how do you tell your daughter she has a half-sister born of a betrayal? How do you explain that your entire marriage had been a mirage built on omission? I buried the file, both figuratively and literally, convinced myself it was irrelevant. But now, with James circling like a hawk, and Isla torn between loyalty and suspicion, I wondered, what if the real twist wasn't James? What if the real twist was Ruth Ann, present day, Indigo Vale? I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I sat in my father's chair in the study, wrapped in the cashmere throw Isla had brought. The house creaked around me, old wood shifting, sighing with wind and memory. At midnight, I wrote Ruth Ann a letter. Then I tore it up. At 2 a.m., I found her on Facebook. Her profile was locked down tight. But the banner photo, a blue ridge, mountain sunrise, felt like fate. I copied the address from her public contact info and drafted a new letter. Dear Ruth Ann, my name is Eloise Maren. You may have heard of me from your mother or my sister Catherine. I am writing because I'm dying. Not today, but soon enough, and you are family. I know this must be strange. I know you never asked to be part of this, but the Maren legacy is real, and I think perhaps you deserve to see it. If you're willing, I would like to meet. Discreetly. No pressure, no expectations. Just a woman at the end of her story, hoping to understand how it all began. I signed it, then added, P.S. The peonies are just about to bloom. You'll know them when you see them. They never pretend to be anything other than what they are. By sunrise, the letter was stamped, sealed, and resting by the door, just as Layla came in with morning meds. Rough night? She asked. The storm's coming, I said. Layla smiled. Forecast says clear all week, but storms don't always come from the sky. The first dinner of the week was more choreographed than celebratory. I sat at the head of the long antique dining table in the west parlor of Indigo Vale, draped in a burgundy shawl, silver hair pinned neatly, old diamond studs glittering like old sentries guarding frail territory. Isla had arranged the cutlery herself, salmon knives, water goblets, monogrammed napkins folded just as I'd taught her 20 years ago. The details mattered. They always had. James, polished as ever in a navy blazer, sat across from Isla. The children had eaten earlier and were now upstairs, blissfully unaware of the politics simmering beneath candlelight. Margaret joined us at the last minute, my trusted third act always arriving just when the tension needed a new character. It began pleasantly, as it always does. You've preserved the home beautifully, James said, nodding around the room. Original paneling? I smiled, sipping my wine. Chestnut, from the forest behind the eastern ridge. My grandfather logged it himself. A shame it's protected land now, he said too casually. And there it was, the flicker beneath the charm, the ambition that oozed through cracks in every conversation. Isla caught the tone too. Her fork hesitated. You mean a shame it can't be bulldozed and turned into luxury rentals? Margaret quipped. James smiled tightly. I meant no disrespect. I just find it fascinating. How property like this, with its scale and history, adapts to the needs of the next generation. It doesn't. I said, lifting my glass. It teaches them. The silence that followed was delicious, but I knew enough about James to sense when a man was regrouping. His pause was strategic, and when he spoke again, the pivot was subtle. Well, however it's handled, it's certainly an asset. Have you reconsidered designating portions for tax relief? Isla and I could explore conservation strategies. I've already implemented them. I interrupted. That stopped him. He turned to Isla. You didn't mention that. She blinked. Because I didn't know. I set down my glass with precision. George filed a conservation easement last week. Most of the acreage is now permanently protected from development. It cannot be sold, carved, or altered. James's knuckles whitened around his fork. Without discussion? With the only person who needed to be consulted, me. Isla's voice was quieter. And this doesn't affect the trust? No, I said, eyes steady on her. You'll still inherit the main house and surrounding grounds. The heritage stays with the Maren name. But the potential's limited, James said. No, I corrected. The damage is limited. The value is eternal. Isla stood, abruptly. Excuse me, I need air. She slipped through the French doors into the veranda, and the soft sound of her heels faded down the garden path. I stood slowly, every muscle in my recovering side screaming. I'll go. Margaret reached for my elbow, but I waved her off. James made no move to follow. That, more than anything, told me who he really was. I found Isla by the creek where she'd once taught herself to skip stones. The spring runoff made the water wild, but the rock she sat on was still dry, half shaded by the willow that had been her secret hideaway at age 10. You knew I'd come here, she said without turning. Of course, I replied, lowering myself beside her. You should have told me. About the easement, about Ruth Ann, about everything. I flinched. She turned to face me, eyes shining in the half-moonlight. I read the letter on your desk, the one to Ruth Ann. So much for discretion. You didn't mail it, she said. But you were going to. Yes. She took a deep breath. Do I have a sister? A half-sister, by blood, not by love. She nodded slowly. You kept it from me. I kept it from both of us. I'm your only daughter. The words were so raw they made my ribs ache. Yes, I whispered. You are. Always. Then why does it feel like you've been preparing to replace me? My heart cracked at the center. Because, I said slowly, I was afraid I already lost you. The creek rushed beside us, filling the silence. She has nothing to do with the trust, I added. The easement is protection, not punishment. You're still the heir. Unless I break the rules, I met her gaze. There are no rules anymore. She studied me, the lines between her brows softening. Why now? Because time's short. Because your husband thinks this house is currency. Because my grandchildren deserve to play in these gardens. Because I was too proud before. And because you came back. For the first time, her expression broke. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and I held her, awkwardly, weakly but fully, for the first time in years. We stayed there until the moon rose over the trees. The next day brought new clarity. Isla came to me in the morning with a proposal. Not a legal one, but emotional. I've asked James to return to Charlotte with the kids. Just for a few days. I need space, and I need to think. I raised an eyebrow. And he agreed? After considerable debate, I told him I was staying to help you, which is true. She hesitated. But also because I'm starting to realize I've been following a script that doesn't belong to me. I wanted to ask what script that was, but I already knew. The one written by fear, obligation, money. Instead, I nodded. Indigo Vale is always your home. That night, she took the guest room down the hall, her old bedroom now converted into a makeshift library. She lit a fire. We talked until 1 a.m. about her childhood, about her regrets, about mine. Somewhere in the conversation, the pain began to shift shape, from weight to witness. James returned 3 days later without the children. That was my first clue. Isla met him at the door, her arms crossed, lips pressed, into a line I recognized from my own reflection. The Maren resolve. She stepped aside and let him in without a word. I watched from the library window, heart sinking as he adjusted the cuffs of his blazer, his armor, and scanned the house like a general returning to contested ground. The tension returned with him. The air thickened, conversations shortened. The rhythm we'd found in his absence fractured immediately. By the second evening, the walls were paper-thin with silence. Margaret visited that night, sensing the change before I even told her. "He's pushing again," I said quietly over. "Tea, of course he is. He knows you're recovering faster than expected. If he wants to move, it has to be soon. Move, control, power of attorney, conservatorship, whatever tool makes the estate vulnerable. I've already signed over healthcare control to George." "Financial control?" she asked. I hesitated. "Eloise." "I've maintained it." Margaret set down her cup. "Then we act now. We bring the fight into the open." "How?" "Let him speak first." The opportunity came sooner than expected. That Friday, the family gathered for dinner again. Just 4 of us now. The children were with Isla's college roommate in Asheville. The air was too still, too measured. I had chosen the setting carefully. The same parlor where we'd first introduced James to the family. A memory he clearly hadn't forgotten. He waited until the second course. "I've been thinking," he said, slicing his roast delicately, "about the long-term sustainability of Indigo Vale." Isla froze. Her fork hovered midair. "We should discuss a management plan," he continued. "Something professional, a foundation board perhaps, including all stakeholders." "No," I said simply. James blinked. "No?" "There is no board. There is no we. This house, this land. It will never be run like a corporation." "It's not sustainable as a private residence," he argued, "especially with your health. You've already required renovation, a nurse, and all paid for without a single dollar from you. Eloise," he said, tone shifting. "You've created a legal fortress, I understand that. But this is about vision, about efficiency, about legacy." "You mean profit?" He didn't deny it. That was his arrogance, his downfall. "You think I don't see the architectural plans?" I asked. "The ones Isla found in your desk drawer?" His face paled. "You had this house mapped out, bulldozed, divided. You called the rose garden a wasted footprint. You labeled the family cemetery as a repurposable overlook. You went through my things?" "No," Isla said, finally speaking. "You left them on your laptop. I was looking for our kids' school itinerary." James turned to her. "This is outrageous. It's a private property." "Exactly," she cut in. "Private, and never yours." "You think your mother's trust will protect it? You think I can't contest undue influence after a major stroke?" And there it was, the threat, spoken, out loud, In my house, at my table. I stood. I've been waiting for you to say that, I said. Now we're clear. He looked uncertain for the first time. Eloise. You will leave. Now. Isla stood too. James, get your things. You can't be serious. She stared at him, tears forming but not falling. You put my inheritance before my family. You put your ambition above my children's history. I won't raise them inside a lie. You're choosing this over me. I'm choosing me, she whispered. Finally. James laughed, a bitter defensive bark. You'll regret this. Not for a second. He turned, furious, storming out of the room. The echo of the front door slamming vibrated like thunder. We didn't speak immediately after. I walked to the east garden alone, shaking. The confrontation had taken something out of me. A layer of armor, perhaps. But I felt lighter, too. Free. Stood among the early blooming peonies, breathing in the dusk air, when I heard footsteps behind me. I'm sorry, Isla said. You have nothing to apologize for. I should have seen it earlier. You saw it when it mattered. She paused, then added, I told him I want a separation. I turned to her. That's not a decision to make lightly. It wasn't. But it was mine. And that, more than anything, mattered. I opened the gate to the lower path. Walk with me. We followed the creek's edge, just as we had when she was a girl. She told me things I hadn't heard in years. Fears, failures, dreams she'd buried beneath James's shadow. I stopped painting after college, she said. He said it was impractical, a distraction. You were brilliant, I said. I didn't believe that anymore. Not until... Now, we reached the old bridge. It had weathered storms like us. We stood there, watching the water rush beneath. I think I want to move here, she said. Eventually. The kids could grow up, with summers in the garden, maybe even winters in the library. You're sure? Yes. I felt the wind shift, like history rewriting itself. But just as I opened my mouth to answer, a flicker of orange caught the corner of my eye. Flame. We ran. Smoke rose behind the west wing. Fast. Too fast. By the time we reached the lawn, Margaret was already there with the gardener, both shouting for the hose. It wasn't just a spark. It was intentional. The garden shed, where the trust documents had been stored temporarily, was engulfed. The generator! Margaret shouted. It's gone! Gone! Destroyed! The wind whipped the smoke toward the porch. Flames crackled through. The lower grove. I heard sirens far off. Too far. Call 911 again, Isla yelled. We need them now. My legs gave out. Margaret caught me before I fell completely. He did this, I whispered. We don't know that. I looked at the shed, the smoke, the deliberate timing. We do. Firefighters arrived 10 minutes later, too late to save the shed, but just in time to prevent it from reaching the main house. By dawn, the flames were out. The air stank of soot and betrayal. The firefighters confirmed arson. Accelerants. No doubt. James was gone. Vanished. Phone off. Car missing. The sheriff arrived by noon, and I gave a statement, hands trembling. Isla did the same. Margaret provided timestamps. George arrived by evening, pale with fury. I'll refile every document. He assured me. The copies are off-site and your will is backed up. The easement stands. But something deeper was scorched. Trust. James was no longer a nuisance. He was a threat. The confrontation had shifted into open war. But he had made one mistake. he burned. Down the past, not the future. 3 days later, I received a letter, unmarked envelope, no return address. Inside, one photo and a note. The photo was of Isla, taken from a distance, walking the grounds unaware. The note read, "You can protect the land, but not her." Isla found me crying, not from fear, from fury. She took the photo, read the note, and said, "Then we protect each other." We went to the sheriff. A restraining order was filed. Security was increased. George filed criminal charges. And through it all, Isla never left. She slept in the bedroom beside mine, walked the garden daily, and called the children every night. By the end of the week, she asked, "May we stay?" "Not for a visit, for good." "Yes," I said. "Forever, if you like," she smiled. "Then I'll make it ours again." And in her smile I saw a promise, not just survival rebirth. It's been 2 months since the fire. Spring has taken over Indigo Vale with quiet conviction. Peonies bloom in audacious color, as if daring memory to linger on smoke. The roses are just beginning to wake, shy, slow, and stubborn, like the women who planted them. The west lawn still bears the blackened mark where the garden shed stood, but the earth has already begun to heal. A green shoot sprouts defiantly through the scorched soil. I sit beneath the veranda in the morning light, a knitted shawl around my shoulders, a hot cup of tea in my left hand. My right hand rests atop the cane beside me, not out of need, but habit. Some days I walk without it. Others, it walks with me. Isla is in the east garden supervising the installation of the new arbor. She's wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat and no makeup. I haven't seen her in lipstick in weeks. She doesn't need it anymore. Her face has found its own radiance. Inside, Emma and Ryan are in the library. Emma's curled on the velvet settee, reading Jane Eyre, the illustrated edition she chose from the shelf last night. Ryan's working on his rock collection at the study desk, carefully labeling quartz and shale with his neat little block handwriting. They've each found a place here. More than a place, a rhythm. I sip my tea and let myself feel something I haven't in years. Peace. Not the brittle surface kind, but a dense-rooted calm, the kind that comes only after the fire, when all the things that pretended to matter have been burned away, the kind that leaves only truth. The investigation into the arson is ongoing. James hasn't returned, not to Charlotte, not to his office. His firm issued a statement. Personal leave. Authorities issued a warrant 2 weeks ago, and George confirmed the trust and easement remain untouched. George has taken steps to ensure Isla and the children are protected. Restraining orders, restricted access to their former accounts, the works. Margaret offered her mountain cabin to Isla if things turned volatile again. But Isla never left. She stayed. She claimed a room on the 2nd floor. Her old bedroom turned guest suite. She brought in the children's clothes, installed a digital piano in the den, and organized the kitchen in ways that made me silently furious for 3 days, until I admitted she was right. Why I ever thought cumin belonged on the top shelf is beyond me. We settled into each other like the house settled into spring. Gently, slowly, without apology. Each Tuesday, we still sit in the sunroom, our weekly appointment, a holdover from the Trust's original terms. No longer an obligation, but a ritual. We talk about her counseling sessions, about the children, about the call she got from the university offering her a guest lecture spot on adaptive historic preservation. I told them I wasn't ready, she admitted during one of our talks. But I think that's fear talking, not truth. Then let truth answer, I said. She did. The lecture's scheduled for next month. She'll be speaking at the very place I gave my last public talk. Charleston. Full circle. The biggest shift came the night she brought me the second box. We were in the dining room after dinner. The children had gone upstairs. Margaret had returned home. Just the two of us, and the scent of lemon balm. "I found this in James's storage locker," she said, setting the box on the table. Inside were files, not just business records, but letters, legal documents, digital photos, proof of meetings with developers, email threads about ways to challenge the trust's integrity, copies of my original will before the stroke, and one thing more, a printed email thread between James and Ruth Ann Delaney. "I didn't know," Isla said, voice brittle. "I swear to you I had no idea." I opened the thread with trembling fingers. It wasn't what I expected. The tone wasn't conspiratorial. It was manipulative. Ruth Ann's emails were confused, hesitant. James had contacted her. Not the other. Way around. He'd dangled a connection to the Maren legacy, teased legal implications, mentioned the estate's value. "Do you want what's yours?" he asked in one. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she replied. And finally, a short note. "This doesn't feel right. I never wanted to be part of this. Please don't contact me again." The date was 3 days before the fire. I set the paper down. "She refused him," I said. "She did." I looked at Isla, her face awash with sadness and something else. Understanding, she didn't want to replace me. Isla said. She just wanted to know where she came from. "You're still my daughter." She nodded. "I know. But so is she. It wasn't a statement of rivalry. It was an invitation." 2 weeks later, Ruth Ann came to Indigo Vale. We met in the garden. She was cautious, wary. Not what I expected. She wore no makeup, her hair pulled back, a small notebook in her hands. She looked like someone who'd spent most of her life asking permission. "I never meant to intrude," she said, "but I kept the letter, the one you didn't send." "How did you get it?" "I visited, the week after the fire. I never knocked, just walked the perimeter. I saw it through the sunroom window. It was still on the desk. I felt no anger, only inevitability." "You're not intruding," I said. "You're standing in your great-grandmother's garden." She blinked, then laughed softly. "I never had a garden. We lived in apartments. My mom worked 3 jobs." "She deserved better," I said. She did. I showed her the rose. Path, the spring-fed creek, the photos on the gallery wall. "I don't belong on these walls," she said, "but maybe I can belong in the margins." "You already do," I told her. That day we planted a sapling beside the old shed's remains, a dogwood, white blossoms, strong trunk, Ruth Ann's choice. Isla helped dig the hole. Emma brought the water. Ryan dropped in one of his favorite stones for good luck. We named the tree Delaney, a new branch on an old root. By June, the house had transformed. The arbor Isla designed now marks the entrance to a new children's garden. Ryan's idea: raised beds for strawberries, a butterfly bush that attracts monarchs, a small bench with carved initials. E.M. Plows, R.M. Emma gave her first violin recital beneath the porch lights. Margaret cried. Ruth Ann filmed it. Ryan brought home a ribbon from the elementary science fair, best geological display. His presentation was called The River Beneath the Garden. I held the ribbon all night like it was spun from gold. Isla published an essay in Southern Preservation Quarterly. It's called Inherited Soil, Reclaiming Indigo Vale. It opens with the line, "We do not own legacy. We steward it." George had it framed. It hangs in the front parlor. As for me, I walk the gardens every morning now. Sometimes with Isla, sometimes with Ruth Ann, sometimes with the children racing ahead. And some days, I walk alone. I stop by the dogwood. I sit beneath the willow. I touch the wood of the house like its skin. Still warm, still breathing. I'm not as strong as I once was. The stroke left its mark. But I don't need strength like I used to. I've passed that burden down. Or perhaps lifted it up. Legacy isn't weight, it's invitation. Tonight we're hosting the first Maren family gathering in 3 years. The guest list is small. Just us. The ones who remained. The ones who returned. The ones who came home. Even if they never started here. I'm wearing the same earrings I wore to Isla's graduation. My hair is freshly set. The peonies are in full bloom outside the dining room window. Margaret pours the wine. Isla lights the candles. Ruth Ann places name cards at each seat. Emma plays a soft melody on the piano. Ryan slips a smooth river stone into my coat pocket. Just in case. He whispers. I smile, holding it tight. Just in case. At the end of the night, Isla toasts. She stands at the head of the table, my place, and lifts her glass. To our roots, she says, voice clear and strong. The ones we fought, the ones we forgot, and the ones we found again. We all raise our glasses, and in that moment I know the story is no longer mine alone. It never was. But now, finally, I'm at peace with where it's going. Indigo Vale will stand. The land will remain. The garden will bloom. And when my time comes, when the last chapter is written and the earth takes me home, I know they will gather here. They will walk the peony paths. They will remember the river. They will see my face in the window light and say, she stayed, she fought, and she passed on the route that remains.